Yes,
Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay, so my name is Stephanie Santiago. I played Alex in a Phase 8 production called Food of Love. Food for Love? God, I'm
Food of Love.
Food of Love.
It's a Shakespeare quote. Remember from your time as Viola?
I know, but I thought there was a word switch. I don't know. I'm brain farting right now. I was in the Food of Love, written by yours truly, by Kelby Siddons. I had the pleasure of starring in that not once but twice, and that took place at MOCA. What was the name of the restaurant? Cafe.
It was Cafe Nola at the time, but they changed it since, and now it's just like the MOCA Cafe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was such a great experience. That was definitely my first time doing anything like that, site specific, immersive. I mean, I've done one silly little Christmas show directed by Jason Collins over at ABET that was very improvisational. So I feel like I very much drew upon that like experience to sort of like engage with the audience. But as far as like site specific, that was very new for me. My experience, I remember opening night, and the tables weren't set exactly like I thought that they were going to be. And I went into like a full on like panic attack in my head. No one knew, of course. This was all like a very internal experience. And yeah, no one had any idea, thank God. But I think like if I could give any advice to any actor or educator doing a site specific performance for the first time, I think the main thing I would say is to be adaptable and be flexible and be ready for those unknowns, because there are going to be tables set that aren't exactly like you envisioned it in your mind, and you just have to adapt and work around that, and know that it's going to be okay at the end of it. It's like any other show in a way. I think you just have to play to your room, make sure that you're playing to the entire room, and use the space wisely. And yeah, I mean, it was a rarely enriching experience for me. I love it. I would definitely do it again if I were so given the opportunity. But it's awesome. It's awesome to be able, because I feel like it's just so different than regular theater, because they're right next to you and you can see their facial expressions, like every nuance of it's just right there. It's nice. It just feels really like you're in someone's living room and you're hosting like a big party. At least that's how I felt most of the time with Food of Love. Like, but yeah, I don't know what.
Yeah, and your role in that was also very much like, I am the host. This is my party. You know, yeah. It lent itself to that very naturally. I think there's a line where you refer to yourself as the Prospero in that situation. Mm-hmm. So that's very natural. So I'm gonna go ahead and send it over to Kristen now, who was not really in a role where you were the host of the party. Do you want to introduce yourself and explain what women's work was like?
Yes, yeah, I'm Kristen Walsh, and women's work was more of an active site-specific show, and that it took place it was 3 acts over the course of 3 floors of MOCA. And so the first was we invited the audience to actually become students in an art class. And so we had 1 floor set up that felt like it was a classroom, and all the audience kind of came and joined us. And then the second act was a series of tours that happened throughout a gallery space. And you were actually groups of people were given to the different students in the class, the actors, who then took a group of just audience members around and gave them a tour as their character. And then the last act was a little bit more traditionally staged on on a proscenium stage. And so that's, you know, the audience got a chance to kind of relax and feel like there was finally a fourth wall up once again for that last act. That was a fascinating experience from an acting standpoint, because you had to be completely and totally on your toes. And there were a lot of lessons that we learned over the course of that. For instance, we had one night where we had to start the first act over again because our audience was they got so engaged with being students in an art class that they sort of forgot there was a performance going on, and we're talking so much that we had to have our actress who's playing the teacher tell them to quiet down and to perhaps work a little bit more quietly amongst themselves, so that way they could actually hear and become engaged with the show itself. And then in that second act, just being an actor with a group of people who are going to throw questions about art at you, and knowing not only how to answer the question, but how your character would answer. It was there was a lot of improv that happened. When you get it on the page, it was just like a 3 or 4 page monologue, but then actually in the space, it ended up being more of a conversation. And so you had to find your places to improv and answer questions, and then naturally segue your way back into what was actually written on the page, which was a really fun task for an actor. And every single time I did it, it was different. Some audiences had a lot of questions to ask, and some didn't have really anything, so I was able to just kind of go through the monologue. And then once you get to that last act, man, it was just a little bit like, okay, well, now I'm back on a stage and I know how to handle this. And so it's just like, that last one was kind of like a little bit of a breath after sort of handling all of that, you know, heavy lifting for the improv in those first 2 acts. So I don't know what else to answer.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I like how you are pulling in a little bit about the audience experience as well, because like the same way that you're really on, for some audience members in an immersive situation, they feel, oh, I'm also on, right? They don't just get to sit back in the darkness and enjoy. And so for some of them, that's an anxiety producing experience. And certainly as actors, I'm sure that you had moments where you're like, wait, for example, in women's work, we had that one man sit down like in what we would think about as the stage space, right? So we made it immersive in the first act, and you had like all of these tables spread out with like art project supplies on them, which is what that audience that one night got really into. They were just like, it's craft time. And they were so happy to do that we probably didn't need to provide much else. But we were ready to, so we wanted to. But remember, we had that one guy that came and sat at the table that was supposed to be designated for the actors. And so that was a moment where we had to like assert, no, sir, like that will not work with what we have planned. You know, like you need to have certain boundaries, but it's harder to express once you start to break down that traditional proscenium rule set. What is the new rule set? So it's a bit of a relief when we get to Act 3 and everyone's like, I know what these rules are. But the first part and people kind of breaking those rules, did we have any moments like that in Food of Love stuff that you can remember where someone was like, I'm just gonna walk through this scene or anything like that? Like in a through reel?
Not that I can recall, although I feel like in the back of my mind there's a hazy memory of like Lindsay going, did you see that guy? Like, I don't know, maybe, I mean, it's possible like someone could have like gotten up to maybe like use the restroom, and that was like a little hard to navigate just because, I mean, if you got up and you really had to use the restroom, I mean, there's no way around it. You had to like cut through that stage, so to speak. But I don't believe there was anyone that really like crossed the boundary. And I mean, I not to my knowledge, you know, but you know me, I could hardly recall the title of the play. So how you
were maybe invested as like, I play my characters. So maybe you're like hyper focused, but we did do some traffic control. I remember because so in that space, we had limited options because of the architecture of that space. Like if people need to go to the bathroom, they need to go to the bathroom. We also had a bar. And the first year, that was the waiting staff's complaint, is that we have to have a time that the bar gets closed because everybody kept coming back to the bar. during the action of the piece, which wasn't good for like focusing their attention going on in the story. And it also meant that the wait staff never got to relax. They were always on and they had like other things to juggle. So setting that in a restaurant and having them juggle that stuff, you know, we were trying to anticipate everyone's needs, everyone's comfort levels. What do we need to be informed about in advance? Now I see Erica Villanueva is trying to join us. And I think I lost hosting privileges.
No.
And so I don't know if I'm going to be able to let her in because I don't know if I'm the host. Did either of you get a notification that you're the host now?
No. I thought it said that it jumped to you. It said Kelby Siddons is the host now.
Oh, well, if I'm on my phone, I can let her in. Let me try coming down to this participants menu real quick. Maybe I'll edit this out. Oh no. Hang on.
Somebody has to be the host, right?
Yeah, it must be me. Hang on. All right, I'm gonna invite and I'm gonna text it to her. Copy invite link. Yep. We'll edit this out. Great work so far, guys. Thank you very much for being here. It's super valuable.
Thanks.
I just texted her the link, so hopefully that means she'll be popping in, and then I can pivot it to her with kind of the same introductory question and see what happens. Yeah, so I'm probably gonna ask you guys next about like the process. We're almost working backwards a little bit, right? So in retrospect, what were you not prepared for? What were you well prepared for? What devices did we use in rehearsal or in the script in order to have you be prepared? That sort of thing. So let's see if she's gonna pop in here. All right. Where you at, girl? I'm so sad. Where is she?
It'd be interesting to focus on the audience experience, just because like audiences are very comfortable with going into a theater space, like they know what to expect and what the etiquette is, they know what's expected of them. But when they walk into an immersive show, it's kind of like all the rules are thrown out. You can interact with the actors, you're allowed to like be present within the space. And so what are the new sets, what's the new rules, and how do you as a theater company and a playwright like tell people what the rules are without telling them, you know?
Right. Or do you just tell them? Like we had those little lanyards that we printed for women's work, and I literally had like an immersiveness rating for each act on that card, you know, where I was like, act 1, semi, you know, I was like semi-immersive, act 2, extremely immersive and interactive, act 3, please sit down and be quiet. You know, like I actually kind of put that out there explicitly. Oh, here comes Erica.
Wonderful.
Erica, can you hear us? Hi. You gotta unmute yourself.
Yeah, whoops. Sorry I'm late.
It's okay.
Whoops, I didn't know. Sorry.
It's fine. I'm just gonna edit this a little bit in post-pro, very lightly. So all you missed was really the introductions, who you are and what show you did with me or us in this Zoom room, and to what degree was it immersive, and how was your experience with that as an actor? Are you ready to jump into that?
Oh wow, sure, let's do it. Okay,
It's a lot.
Yeah, let's let's try it. Okay, so my first show with you, Kelby, was never mind. Women's work. And I got to work alongside Kristen as well. And okay, what comes next? Yikes.
So how immersive, or in what way was that show immersive? Like what curveballs did it include for you as an actor?
Ooh, okay. Having to pretend I was an art curator. Wow, that was something, especially as like my first theater production I was involved with in the city. That was that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting to pretend I knew things I did not. But it was, you know, I didn't have much experience with, you know, just kind of pretending like I knew how to analyze art, especially modern art. But it was fun. And then also getting to interact with the audience, that was incredibly nerve-wracking, but it also helped me develop a better or more confidence, I think, as an actor, having to force myself to interact with a bunch of strangers when usually you have your script and you're on stage and you just perform whatever's on the page. So it was definitely a unique experience that I'm really fortunate I got to be part of. So there was that one. And then Stephanie, I was with you in the Yo Soy Latina showcase. With it being immersive, I mean, because that was all pretty much scenes from plays that have already been produced. I don't know, did we have a whole lot of interaction with the audience in Yo Soy? I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I have some recordings of like people salsa dancing and stuff.
Oh yeah,
after
like
the show,
yeah,
so or like in the in between maybe the intermission.
Yeah.
I think our focus is on food of love and women's work for
gotcha.
round. Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thank you for being here.
No,
so,
of course.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit. We just touched on briefly times that audience members didn't quite get the rules, or we were really thrown for a loop as a performer. Do you have special recollections?
Yes, actually, the building sequence when we handed out the blocks, I think it was the trial run, and people got so caught up with building their little structures, I don't, if that's what you call it, and we were supposed to get back to the scene. And I remember Cinda was like, okay, let's get back to the show. And people were like, yeah, but our block. She's like, okay, enough of the blocks. We're getting back to the show. It was just really funny. That was something.
Oh yeah, and I love how she had to break in too. She had to like ring her little bell, and she was like, maybe we could spend the next 5 minutes working quietly, more introspective.
Oh yeah, because they were loud too. I'm like they just completely forgot they were watching a show because they were so immersed in everything that like what we were doing. It was cool, and it was like, okay, we have a show.
Actually, now that you say that, Erica, something similar did happen in Food of Love the second go round that I do remember. It was like we were coming back. It was like the third scene, and like they were still like the audience was still like very loud because they were talking amongst themselves during the break, eating and enjoying their food, and Theo and I had walked on to continue the show, and I think he had like taken a fork to like a wine glass to like try and like quiet them down, but they still were not getting it. Like they were drowning us out, and we were just like, man, I really wish that we could like hear each other in here. It's so like we had to like kind of be like semi saucy about it to like try and get them to quiet down. But yeah, that's just, I guess, comes with the territory of site-specific performance, especially when you involve food, food and libations. Like they're getting their drink on, and they were enjoying the show. It was just like, okay, it's time to like focus on us now.
Yeah, I think it was that too. There was definitely a mixture of alcohol involved in the building of wooden structure process. I think people were just having a really good time getting to create things that they probably haven't done since like elementary.
It's an intoxicating museum, right? Both of them happened. Both productions happened in the same museum, which has a nice bar.
Oh yeah,
it's a great bar.
Yeah, and so whether it was the invitation to participate that was intoxicating, or literally they were having a drink, which might not happen, right? If we're talking to like middle high school teachers that are putting on shows, but something to be aware of, right, is like what behaviors are available to the audience, and if they choose to engage in one, heavily, how will that influence things?
Right.
So it's a good question to take in.
You could maybe use like music as a tool, because I think we tried, like, I think like the return of the scene, like when the show was continuing, tried to put, or maybe they like dimmed the music down. So I think there was music on.
You got it.
During the intermission, so to speak, and it was quieting down, but like I don't think that the audience themselves could hear the music quieting down because it was kind of loud in the atmosphere. So maybe if there was some sort of like audio cue to, like, I don't know, you could somehow use to signify, hey, the show's back on. I don't know, I think you could get really creative figuring those things out.
And lighting is usually the most powerful focusing tool that we have, but especially with women's work, where we were literally like, okay, now everybody, let's go down these stairs. Like, we did not have control of the lighting because we were moving so many spaces, right? Yeah. If we had a long-term dedicated run of Food of Love, maybe in a budget that was bigger, maybe we would bring in lighting or talk to the building more about how to manipulate and focus the lighting. But yeah, when writing this script, I had to really focus on sound and also what people said. So Cinda, as the teacher, having that bell to ring, right? Also having someone who's in a position as host or authority was another way that in the script we could manage things, or assign someone a role that they could manage things. Kristen, you look like you wanted to say something a little earlier.
Oh yeah, now I don't remember exactly what that was going to. Oh, I do. Yeah, it's another thing. As an actor, you have to be so flexible when you're working in an immersive piece. And so that's just one of those things that, like, your actors have to be prepared for. Sometimes people aren't going to realize the show started again. And it doesn't mean they're not interested in the show. It just means that maybe they haven't gotten that cue yet. Because especially if you're doing a site-specific work, you may not have the music cues or the light cues that traditionally tell people that a show is starting up again. And so you have to come up with the cue that's going to tell your audience, hey, guess what? Show's coming back on. Quiet it down, put your wooden blocks down, we're talking.
Right. How did you guys explain these shows to people that you were inviting to come see them? Because the marketing piece is sometimes difficult as well. Like, marketing an online show is difficult to explain to people how that works. Like, there's a lot of confusion about that. But even site specific, people get concerned about, how much am I expected to interact? How long will this take? Et cetera, et cetera. What did you guys hear from people when you were trying to advertise or explain?
I definitely heard that like, well, I mean, like, do I have to participate type thing? Because, I think that so many people, when they see like actors coming down an aisle, they start to like close themselves off and they're like, I don't want to participate. And so being able to explain to people that, like, yes, it's immersive. You're going to feel like you're really like a part of the action, but you don't have to talk if you don't want to. You don't have to act. You're not there to do that. That's not your job. You're still just there to be an audience member. And so if they seem like they're hesitant about the idea of participating, it's just like, you're there to experience theater in a new form. And if for you that means still standing back on the outskirts and, kind of viewing it still from an outside perspective, you're more than allowed to do that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I told my friends it was like dinner theater, but sexier.
Dinner theater, but like where the food is mentioned in the script.
Yeah, that's how I would explain that one. Is I was like, it's dinner theater, but the food is a character. And then they were like, oh, so that one had like a nice elevator pitch. It was a lot harder to explain women's work to people, which is why I think I laid it out so specifically in the program, where I was like, here's what you'll do on this floor of the building,
You know what I just realized is that we could have called it theater on your feet. Like,
yeah. And the fancy word for that is like ambulatory theater. But we did invite them to sit down in act and 3.
I think I described it as it's a show with a tour of the museum. I think that's pretty much how I described it, by people who are not art curators, by actors, given by actors. That's, I think, and of course, the concern of, oh God, do I have to like say, no, you can be your wallflower self, and just you're in it, but just continue to be you. But yeah.
And Erica, you played a little bit more of versus Kristen, like a wallflower character.
Yeah.
Would you say that's accurate? So did that give you like a little bit of solace as heading into those?
I think it helped me. Yeah, it helped me in a way, like almost be on the same level as my tour group, because they knew that I was written as a more quiet character. And I think having that kind of understanding, giving them that in the beginning of the tour, like, hey, I'm a student, I'm still learning. So like, we're all in this, like figuring this out together. And I think that really helped. So yeah, I would say solace. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the same way that like Cinda being the teacher, or like Steph being the chef. Ooh, Steph Chef. I've never said that out loud before. Having someone enroll as like the master of ceremonies, also allowing the audience to be enroll where they're not expected to know everything, right? Whether it's like, okay, you're a student, or like you're just someone at a restaurant in my mind in this show. You kind of defined in the first scene what their roles were. Interestingly, with women's work, we also had people pre-sorted into what tour group they would be in with the card on their lanyard, but then they got to meet the characters in Act 1 before going on the tours. So I have no data for this, but I'm wondering how many people ignored whose tour they were supposed to be on and were like, she seems chill, I'm going on her tour because she will not make me talk. Or like whether there was some trading card action that went on where they were like, hey, I've got the quieter one, like, do you want to trade? Because we definitely didn't police. We weren't like, you're not supposed to be on this tour,
right. Yeah, it was very chill.
Yeah, you could only look around and be like, Ari seems to have a larger tour tonight, or something like that, to try to get that anecdotal data. But like, I just don't know really, But people had options, I think is the point, and a little bit of time to find out. So you guys mentioned that you've got, art curating, not your thing in real life, being a gourmand or being a chef, Steph, not exactly your thing in real life. True?
I can boil an egg.
Hey.
No.
So my question is, and then I had another play that I did down in Gainesville, and that was all historical figures. So those people had to know history. So I'm writing these scripts that like asks you obviously to be someone else, but experts on stage seems to be a theme with me. When that is required of your character and then you have to improvise with some of that, like how much research did you do outside of rehearsal? And how much did you rely on sort of like clever ways of rerouting when you weren't able to answer a question like an expert would?
I actually did I'm not going to say like a huge extensive amount, but like during that time of Food of Love, like I watched like, I don't remember the name of it, but there was like this like show, like this foodie documentary thing on Netflix. And so I was like watching that. I did start watching stuff that I normally would not have, just to like sort of get into that like foodie realm. I watched Ratatouille. I never had before. And like I watched like YouTube videos on how to like pronounce those friggin' sauce names because they were all French, and I didn't know how to pronounce most of them. So I did a little bit just to like see, I don't know what that life is like, what it's like to love food, and because food is such an expression of love. I mean, not to be corny, but like this, I mean, I did learn a little bit in this show. Like the one thing I wanted to really grasp was like the personality of a chef. And I really, the one thing I gleaned was how much they really, like they put their heart and soul into making these dishes. Like it's so much, it's like an extension of them. And their culture. So I tried to infuse that into the performance, that sort of love of tastes and smells and, you know, all those things that you really wrote into the script. It with your, you know, language, it came through, and I was able to like feel that just by like watching, you know, foodie stuff on Netflix and stuff. So
yeah, and side note for me in terms of like seeking expertise, what was nice was because we were actually collaborating with a chef to create the meals, I could like run the script by her, and I was like, is this all sounding right, you know? So that part of the process to just make you feel at home with that stuff is really important. Did you use any of that on the fly, or was that just kind of like the patina of this character?
What's that?
Did you get to use any of that extra knowledge on the fly, like when you were talking to people between acts or anything?
Not really. I just needed it to like pronounce those words correctly.
Yeah.
I couldn't be a chef and not know how to say béarnaise. Like that wasn't gonna be a very authentic. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Women's work.
I think unlike Stephanie's character and even Kristen's know-it-all character, I think it helped that we were written as students, so we weren't supposed, like, it was our final project. So yes, there was a level of knowledge we needed to have by that final project to give that tour. There was still that level of goodness, words are hard.
Being a novice.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I do remember, apart from the rehearsals we had in the museum space, taking extra time to look at the other art pieces that my character didn't have written in the script to discuss, just to get a better overall understanding of the themes of each artist. And I think that helped. I know for a couple of the performances, I'm sure I had mentioned, or I think it helped me explain or have a better understanding of the art pieces I had to wow. Words that I had to
explain.
Thank you. Yeah, there we go. Explain. Wow, it's first grade, Erica. Explain to the audience. So yeah, that could have been a bit more concise, but yeah.
You know, I actually lucked out because like my character wasn't the know-it-all character. That was Ariana's character. She had to know everything. Wait. Because like my character was more like fly by the seat of my pants type thing, which is great because that's how I am as a person. So I did a fair amount of research into Louise Nevelson, who was like kind of the primary focus of the play and of the art exhibit that we were touring. And then kind of like you, Erica, I made sure that I took plenty of time and sort of some downtime in rehearsals to just walk around the exhibit and really get a sense and a feeling of how I felt about the pieces. Because I did have moments where I was giving my monologue and somebody would point to a piece that I didn't think about and was just like, no, but what about this one? And I had to be ready to go with something. And so I made sure that like I kind of had some preliminary ideas and thoughts about it. And also my character would totally be like, you know what? I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. There's like, oh, I need to run that by my professor, you know, like there was
I was like, I don't know, I'll let you know on Monday. How about that? You know, like sometimes I just kind of, I was like, I didn't study this part, guys. Like, come on. You know, I really played into that. Like you said, the student idea. For if somebody asked me, some people ask me some questions, like really specific questions about like, what was the particular feeling this artist had when they created this specific piece? And I was like,
yeah,
I don't know. But I felt comfortable saying that because I was a student in that scenario. If my character was supposed to be like a docent and who should know all of these things, then the amount of research that I would have done would have been a lot heavier, and it would have had to have been, because you never know what people are going to throw at you in those scenarios. So I tried to deepen the knowledge, perhaps a little bit deeper than what my character would have, just in case. And also because it was fascinating, but I didn't stress myself out to like have really intense things to say about every single piece, just in case.
Yeah, and we hid the professor during that time also. So like, oh, I need to get with my professor. I don't know where she is. You know, like we couldn't really answer. And luckily, being at a museum, right, their function is if people have questions after the show, and that's kind of the point, is to inspire their questions. There are experts that they can, you know, consult with. So in terms of being site specific, the site also serves that function. We almost should be talking to Mitch about, he was a TA. So the idea was that he was a grad student. So he was supposed to have more expertise than the 3 young ladies that were students. But his whole approach as a TA was that he was really a teacher at heart. So people would ask him a question and he'd go, well, what do you think? And he'd be all about the openness of interpretation. And people really loved that vibe on his tour, though. Like I had people afterwards come up to me and be like, that's such a great TA that you guys got for this. You know, and I feel like they were almost mistaking him for being the real deal. Oh, my light just turned off. Okay, anyway, looking a little more stark and dramatic now.
Can we like just mention really quickly how much of a wild card our professor character was in that particular scenario? Because she did that professor thing where she just walked around and joined random tours at random times, and it was different every single time we did the performance. And so it's like you already have all of this, you know, randomness that's going to happen just with audience and that sort of thing, but then it was built into the show a little bit. And that you never know when your professor was going to show up at the back of your tour and be listening quietly.
Like you out a little.
Yeah, and maybe throw a question out there. And it's like, well, thanks, Cinda. I appreciate you making my job more difficult, you know?
Yes. And we also, I forgot about this until right now. We had evaluation cards, peer evaluation cards that we used to ask people, how do you think your fellow student did on their project? And we got a few responses, and it was mostly just very much like, they did a good job. You know, like nobody wants to write that card that's like, fail them, you know, or anything. It's a fictional scenario. But that was another thing that we put in place to try to gauge what that was like. And also if they had any follow-up questions that we needed to connect someone, you know, with for an answer, that was an outlet that we tried to make available. But mostly people were just complimentary. But that was one of the motivating things behind that. Okay. We're probably coming up on time. I don't have a timer or anything on this. Just the fact that my light died makes me think it's that kind of ominous. So as kind of like a parting shot here, thinking about someone younger than you, like think about your high school self, maybe trying to take something like this on. What if you were directing something like this with high school students as a director? What gifts would you give them? How would you want to make sure that they feel taken care of or empowered through the process? What particular challenges would you need to prepare them for? That was like 5 questions. Sorry about that. It was like the same one reworded.
So the real gift to me, and I don't know if you felt this way, Erica, during the women's work process was our assistant director, Jack. And it was because whenever we were doing our giving our tours and that sort of thing, he would throw you off. He would throw questions out at you. And there was the one night where he pretended to be an old man and was just like, I'm slow, hold on, you know, just like trying to keep you paying attention to your audience members. And so having that person there who's going to, in the rehearsal process, kind of throw your actors off for a minute and then maybe help them get back on if they need it, just so that like when they start getting audience questions, when something happens that's not planned, that they've already had some practice with figuring out how to improv their way back to the script.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would, like during the rehearsal process, we tried to recreate that room in MOCA as best we could each time that we rehearsed. And that really helped. Even going to the point of like putting that god awful pillar right in the middle of the room, so we could like, you know, rehearse with that obstacle and be prepared for that. And Jamario would like, he would like, because like 90% of that show was me monologuing and me walking around the room, and he would, every time he'd be like, you're not working this side enough, work over here, you know, walk over here. Those things really helped as far as just like making sure you are playing to the entire room. And he would, you know, kind of like Jack, he would act like he was an audience member and react and those kinds of things. I think those things are super, super beneficial. And like I said earlier, just to be as flexible as possible and to expect the unexpected. Like, if the room is not laid out exactly to your standards, you know, like work with it, adapt, it's going to be okay. Move around these obstacles physically and metaphorically. And I think just enjoy yourself. It really is. And feed off of the energy that the audience is giving you. I think that's a huge plus. I mean, that was really fun for me. Once I started kind of focusing like on them, it took the pressure off of me, oddly enough. And just making sure that like, you know, like, I mean, maybe it speaks more to like my role, maybe more so than women's work. I don't know. But I felt very much like a host. And so it was making sure the audience was taken care of. Are they enjoying the food? And so that kind of, I don't know, it made it easier to be in that role, and just because it was written, like I had to be confident. I had to make sure that they were enjoying themselves. So just be adaptable, be flexible, have fun, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what Steph said, I would say definitely to just have fun and just flow with whatever happens, you know, and not be so rigid on like, you know, certain things happening at a certain time or doing things a certain way, because it's going to change every performance. And with it being an immersive piece, I mean, not only for the audience, but as the actor, like you are not only this character on the stage, you are this person outside of you know, just a traditional platform, and you're breaking that wall, and you are immersing yourself in that character, and just have fun with it. And don't be so hard on yourself. It requires a lot more improv than traditional theater, obviously, and it's an experience. And I look forward to seeing more productions like this in the future, because it is an experience I think every actor should get to have in their life. So different.
Yeah, I just want to like kind of highlight something that you said, Erica, which is this idea like of just kind of going with the flow. You know, it's so important when you're an actor to like forgive yourself for mistakes that happen, but it's doubly so in any sort of immersive piece, because things are going to throw you off. Things are going to go not according to plan. And you have to be able to like shake it off and get yourself back into it and not let it stop you. You have to be empathetic with yourself and with your audience and just be like, all right, this happened, we're moving on, you know, let it go.
And also knowing like what are the most important constellation points in the piece so that you can get back on track, right? Like, oh, well, that joke was unheard because they had such a good time playing with the blocks. That's fine, but they do need to hear about this final project so that the third act makes sense, right? So we have to get that part in there, that sort of thing. Absolutely. But when I definitely
I just want to say that we, as actors, we definitely had a little mini conversation amongst ourselves while all this loud noise was going. We were just like, okay, so they haven't heard anything. Where do we want to go back to? Let's go back to here. That works. Yeah, that gives them everything. And then like we went up and we got Cinda and we got everything like restarted, but we made sure that we had a little moment where we were like, are we good? We're going back to here.
Regrouping. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So those things like really trusting your ensemble, right? And really understanding the story and trusting yourself, that's always important for an actor, is sort of magnified for you guys by the immersive process. But that's also the reward in a way. Yeah. Am I kind of processing that correctly?
Yes. Yeah.